Hey, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co.
I'm Professor Meg.
And today we're reviewing Harmonies by Libelud. This is a 1 to 4 player game. It's 1 to 4. I just want to make sure it's 4, not 5. It always catches me up. This is a 1 to 4 player game of pattern building. The basic idea of the game is you're going to be dealing with these cards over here, these tokens that you're going to be drafting onto your board, and you're trying to score based on the intrinsic way tokens are going to gather into patterns on your board, as well as based on the cards you're going to acquire. You're going to do all of this, and we'll go a bit more into detail in a second, but you're going to do all of this until one player has 2 or fewer spots left on their board, at which point that will trigger game end and scoring. But to go a bit more into detail over there as far as the turn structure and whatnot, on your turn you're going to go ahead and gather one of these groupings of tokens. So you can go ahead and gather these 3 or however you want. In my case, I'm going to go ahead and gather these 3 because I want to show you how a typical turn might go. So I'm going to gather these 3 and I'm going to place them onto my board. Now what I'm going to do for these in particular is I'm going to go ahead and drop this down over here. I'm going to drop this down over here as well. It's going to be a nice scoring turn. And then I'm going to drop down this over here. Now, as I place these out, there are intrinsic ways these score. I also should note, by the way, we actually are not supposed to use 2 different sides. True. I just wanted to show you the 2 different sides.
For the review. Sorry.
But what you're going to be doing over here is you gather tokens, place them onto your board, and then if you want, you don't have to, if you want, you can gather one of the cards from this row, which I'm going to gather this card, adding it to my cards. You can have up to 4 cards at a time, but you can complete these cards. You see, when you gather cards, you're going to put little tokens on them, and that's going to represent the scoring potential if you can build the patterns shown in the cards. In this case, because I have a level 3 tree over here, 1, 2, 3, and the little mountains next to them, I can place these down onto the mountains where it shows you place the token on the card, and that's going to score for that over there. Additionally, on this card over here, which I already had in play, I added another little meadow over there, which means I can go ahead and add that, and that's going to help clear this card up, scoring me more points as well. That's going to be one of the main ways you score points in the game. The other main way you score points in the game is based on the intrinsic patterns of your cards over here, in which trees are going to score based on their height. They need brown tokens below them and then a single green on top, and the height of that green is going to determine how many points a tree scores. Mountains are going to score based on the height of the mountain, but only if they're next to other mountains. This 7-point mountain right here would be worth, because there's 3 of them, this 7-point mountain right here would be worth 0 points if there wasn't a mountain next to it. So you want to make sure your mountains are not on their own. And then over here, your red tokens over here are going to be buildings. They can go on top of a variety of colors, and they score based on the number of different colors around them. Your fields over here, which I skipped, are going to score. A field on its own is worth no points, but 2 or more fields is worth 5 points. So these over here are 5, that one's 0. The problem is if I connect this over here, that's actually not going to help me because that will make it a single 5-pointer. Versus placing this over here or over here, this would actually be a great place to place this because it would clear off 1 more of those and help me score 5 points. And then lastly, for your rivers are going to be the one that scored differently depending on the terrain you have.
We're actually swapped.
We actually are swapped, yes indeed.
Oh, I was going to swap cards.
Yeah. You can score for the length of a river on this board, and for this board you're going to score based on how the river is perfect. That's going to score a 5-point section because Meg has created little islands from her rivers.
Which actually means 10 points because I automatically have 2.
100%. That's basically what you're going to be doing. To end off your turn, you're going to refill from the bag, refill any cards if you need to, and then keep playing until one person has 2 spaces or fewer on their board. The last thing to cover before we dive into the review is going to be these cards over here, which are little things you could choose to add to your game. So the basic game, you're going to start on this side. If you want to mix things up, you can go to the other side. Again, all players doing the same thing. And then these cards will give you a starting card you can get that when you earn this, what it does a little differently than the other cards. These cards are going to unlock direct scoring. So for example, if the end of the game was trigger right now, I would get 12 points plus 6 points plus all the scoring based on my terrain over here. But these will give you a different way of scoring. You're going to get these at the beginning of the game. You pick one, and then if you complete the objective, it'll give you a new way to score for something else the whole game. And that is basically how you play Harmonies. Did I miss anything else?
Well, I think right now would be a great time to just jump in with the solo rules because I think this is one that's very relaxing and fun to play solo. So the solo mode plays very similarly, except your market that's available is different. So you would have 3 cards available instead, and you can take a card, but if you don't take a card that turn, you're able to discard it instead. So you're able to work through the different animals without having to take them.
Interesting. I have not played solo.
It's very calming.
Sounds a little Calico or Cascadia-ish in terms of the solo.
Yeah, I would say similar to Calico in solo mode, except not as difficult.
Oh. That's less fun. I like the difficulty.
Yeah, it's that calming feel of, trying to make like this beautiful little
forest
area.
Patterns.
Yeah.
And you're just trying to beat your score?
I believe so. So I've only played the solo mode on BGA, so I'm not sure if the actual game has modes or anything like that. So that's just the regular BGA solo mode rules.
With that, we're going to go ahead and dive into a review with our what we like, don't like, and can see others not liking. Starting off with what we like. Meg, what do you like about this game?
Well, my favorite thing to start off with when I really like something like this is the components. I really like these wooden tokens. I think that there's something special to be said when wooden tokens are painted and when they have like something that makes them look special. And I think that when you have a game like this where it's really fun, like point optimization, something like this can really take it from like, okay, to, oh, I want to touch it, I want to play it, I want to take the thing. So
yeah, it does have a nice table aesthetic and look to it as you build things out. That's going to pair nicely as well with the cards, which has nice thematic art of the various species you're trying to pull into your forest. Although
they're all
obviously,
animals.
Yeah, obviously it's very abstract, pasted on theme kind of, but you are gathering these, placing them out. The art and components definitely do add a nice vibe to it.
Yeah.
For me, the biggest thing I'm going to like about the game, there's not a lot of different things, but the biggest thing I like is just going to be the pattern matching in this game. The fact that you're trying to juggle multiple different things as you go through it. And by multiple different things, I mean the inherent scoring of the tokens themselves, but then the different cards as you pull them in focus and incentivize you to create different patterns. It's one of those games where as you're looking through things, you're like, ooh, I want to add this, but does this complement what I'm doing nicely? And this one kind of does a little bit because I can get tokens on this stone over here to pair nicely with this, but if I gather these cards and if I start getting blue tokens, this blue token over here, I can start using that and inherently already putting out one of these tokens directly on that from there. So you are trying to find these commonalities, which is going to give you a lot of ways to figure out, because there's a whole deck full of cards.
Every time you take something, I just feel it.
You should. Every time you gather a new card, you're thinking through a new way that you're trying to mesh your entire ecosystem together. And I really appreciate that level of just juggling different things, and the game's going to have you the game's going to give you your pre-programmed different things, but then allow you to create the own structures and ways you want to specialize based on the tokens that come out. So easily my favorite part is just going to be the conglomeration of ways to score points and how you have to juggle them.
And I think this play is like different but similar. But I really enjoy that there are a lot of games that can kind of fit this genre of you're doing something to do something with points, where you're filling in the puzzle of something. And there are some where the different things you place can change in point value or how they interact. And I actually like that these ones are like always the same because of how the pattern is in my mind, that I really like the pattern building and focusing on all of this. So I do like that this isn't variable, which I feel like is weird to say that I don't like when something has like variation, but I do like that these never change.
What I thought you were going to say, something you've said across in the past about this, is that sometimes you can feel really clever in the game when you combine different cards at different points in the evolution.
Yes.
That can be like, sometimes a card will want you like, oh, be next to a mountain of 2 height. And then later it's like, be next to a mountain of 3 height. And you're like, I can do both of those things if I just time this right.
Yes,
which can
like
be a
right
really satisfying.
Where you have a water and then the 2 stone, you can have a bunch of 2 stone everywhere and then eventually, have them score with that.
Yeah.
These 2 cards together would be great.
Oh, that is nice. Yeah,
right.
It does work. Yeah, you can have fun little things like that. I also like the asymmetric cards over here. They'll give you something else to go through. Again, it just gives you a new way to score points, something else to go for. I like it gives you a little choice to begin off the game. And that's, again, on top of you have 2. For the whole game, you'll have 1 set scoring, the other set scoring, and then the evolved scoring as you go through it. Past that, anything else you like?
I think that's where I'm at.
Yeah, there's not like a lot of different things to focus on in this game.
It's very straightforward.
Table presence and then comboing things in order to score as many points as possible. A small amount of variety from the starting cards from the different sides. It's fairly straightforward. I think because there's only really one thing I'm focusing on, I'm just going to focus on, I think it does an excellent job at that one thing, at the different ways you're trying to combine things and building out an ecosystem, which I guess the last thing I'll say is, as you finish off your ecosystem, you do have something you've built over the course of the game that's your own special little system that you've built based on the way you're trying to score points, which adds to that table presence at the end, the developed table presence of what you've built at the end of the whole game.
And I would just say, like, this is more just a note, but there is a lot of replayability. So for everything that we're saying, the way all these can, change and come out, and even just with player order and what tokens are available and how you started to set yourself up, there is a ton of replayability.
I completely agree. I mean, that's why, there's only one thing that this game, I usually have a list of oh, I like this and this. I like the patterns. I like the pattern building, but it does a great job at that, and it develops, every game is a slightly different challenge as far as, ooh, I feel I can do better if I mix and match and combine differently. As far as things you don't like in the game.
So for me, I have played this a lot. I will say that. I have played this quite a lot, both solo and with friends. I've played it more solo than anything else. And I feel like the pacing is just a little bit not what I want.
Interesting. What sense?
Not to compare it to similar games that have a similar drafting system, like something like Azul, but I feel like with everything that you see and comes out, either when you're playing solo, you're not able to really clear this as much, that there's no like end round where it just clears and then 5 new things are filled. Or when you're playing with other people, I just feel like it sometimes endgame can get triggered based on some people being able to build a lot of trees and you're not able to do that, or based on like the stones that come out. So I feel like it can be different both with solo and multiplayer, but either way the pacing always feels like a little off. When I'm playing solo, I always feel like I should have one more turn.
Interesting. For me, my only complaint is something similar to what you said, which is that I play this game a bunch. Sometimes I have great games of it. I think most of the time I have great games of it. But then even when this happens, I still enjoy myself. But there are definitely games where you're building towards something and they just don't show up in the marketplace. Or alternatively, they show up on every third turn and someone else gets to it before you do. Even right now, you can see there's no trees out here right now. Which means if you're trying to build out your trees, you're kind of out of luck until they show up. And because the market is starved, at that point, everyone's usually snatching that thing. So right. I find inevitably, maybe every other game, there's a resource that seems to be in hot demand just based on the variety of what showed up. And the tricky part is, as much as I appreciate the variety of having to juggle around different things, if you've already taken a card that needs something and that thing's not showing up, and when it does show up, other people are taking it because the market's starved, that is the one frustrating moment that I have in this game. And it's not something that it's a frustrating moment that can happen not infrequently. I usually still enjoy myself. I can usually bounce around it and focus on other cards, so it's not game breaking. But like sometimes you're like, oh, okay, great. Now I have a tree card and there's no trees, and I guess it is what it is. We'll just have to work our way around that as opposed to being able to actually score it. So that's my only complaint.
I would say the best games that I've had of this are 4-player games. So, and I think that has to do with both like the variability and even you just kind of feel like you're working toward your own puzzle, both with like the cards that come out and the tokens. Because even in a 4-player game, I have done terribly. So it's not a matter of if I'm winning or not, but I still feel like I'm able to interact with enough of the game.
Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah.
In any case, as far as final thoughts, you want to go first? Should I?
You can.
For final thoughts, overall for Harmonies, I really enjoy Harmonies. It doesn't do a lot that I think is vastly innovative or game-breaking or anything like that, but what it does do, it does well. To me, this feels like an amalgamation of a few different games I've seen over the years, but combined in a way that really works, I want to say, not necessarily the best game I've played in the genre, but amongst the better ones I've played in the genre, just from how cleanly everything it's done. For me, this is going to be a 4.5 out of 5. It does one thing that I like, but that one thing it does really, really well as far as giving me I constantly have the desire to dive back in and pair up new combinations of animals and try to figure out if I can score just a little bit better based on, well, everything the game's throwing at me. So 4.5 out of 5.
All right, Alex, before I give my rating...
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. Can we get a little silly on the channel?
Yeah, why not?
A little silly, right?
I have no clue what's coming.
For all the viewers at home, I know you have it in like every single video, but I think we haven't done this in a while and gone over it. Do you want to quickly rattle off what each rating is?
Sure. Well, the rating system is as follows, roughly. I'm going to start at 2.5 more okay up. It's all listed in the description down below, but effectively, let's actually start at 5 and go down. A 5 is the best game. I always want to play those games. Whatever it is about them, I almost always want to play them. I say always, but like, of course, if you're sick or things, you always want to play those games, period, full stop. While
we're being silly and being on a tangent, keep your eye out for the top 100 because that's where these ratings are going to come into play, and that's coming up as well.
4.5s, great games. They are just shy of, like I'm almost always in the mood, but I'm not always. Something about it, whatever it is, whether it's player count, whether it's too heavy, not player count, whether it's too heavy, whether it's too long, whether it's not satisfying enough, something pulls it back just a tad for me that I'm probably regularly going to say yes to it, but I'm not always in the mood. A 4 is just a straight up great game. 4s impress me. I am impressed by a 4. Every time I play a 4, that means that game impressed me. Maybe I hold on to it, maybe I don't. That depends on what other games are in my collection and my group and all that, but 4s means I was impressed by this game. I actually should update the rating because I think I actually like...
This is what I wanted to talk about because I know you've changed it a little bit.
Well, it's a slight... I usually say it's a great game, but I like the language impressed me. I like that specifically. Yeah. A 4 impressed me. Once you get to a 3.5, I had a good time. I liked it. A 3.5 is a good game. I enjoy 3.5s. In fact, I would say that in a perfect world, I wish I could play all my 3.5s, but the reality is I don't have time for everything, and so usually, not always, but more often than not, 3.5s don't actually stay in my collection just because I have so many better games available, and they don't, like, there's something about them. They were fun. It was a fun time, but I don't need to play all the 3.5s. Once you move down to a 3, there's a very harsh line between a 3 and a 3.5, and that line is whether I care or not that I play it again. So a 3 is still a good game, but if I never play it again, I don't care. I had fun, I'll play it again, but I just don't care if I never play it again. The 3.5 has that drop of a twinge where I kind of wish I had time for everything, but better games win out. A 3 is just, I just don't care, but I still had fun. It's still good, but I just don't care that I'll never play it again. And I probably will never play it again. A 2.5 starts moving down into the actual problems. Once you get down to a 2.5, I'm willing to play a 2.5 again under the right circumstance, but at this point, I actively prefer not to play the game. At this point, we're moving into like, okay, something. I prefer not to play it. I'll play it if you really want to. If you want a second game, if you want this, if you want that, whatever it is, I'll play it, but I prefer not to. At a 2, straight up, don't want to play it. I did not enjoy it. I just absolutely straight up don't enjoy it anymore. And at a 1.5, we start moving down into game-breaking things where games are just simply not good. So a difference between a 2 and a 1.5, a 2 is a game I didn't enjoy. A 1.5 is a game that I actively think is bad. It's not just about me. I actively think it's bad, but there's still redeeming qualities about it. And a 1 is straight up a bad game.
You're going to stop at 2.5.
I know, I changed my mind though. I have ones. Once you get to a 1 to me is a game, like I have rated games 1s before, but they're not games you've ever seen reviewed. They were so bad to that they never got to that point that I'd bother reviewing it. It's literally broken in any capacity. And I'd say that I have given out 1.5s on the channel. That's because usually like there's something that I liked about it, even if it was broken and bad. Anyways.
With that being said, I wrestled with this one because, as I've said, I've played this a lot. I am going to rate this at a 3.5. And that is because in the beginning, I would say maybe even in my first few plays, I loved it to the point that it was a 4.5. And I have binged this game to the point where I think I would have put it at a 3. Because I actively do not want to play it again.
Then why are you giving it 3.5?
Because then I thought about it and considered it and said, well, is that a matter of just recent and me binging it too much solo? And I was like, would I play this again at PAX Unplugged 2 months from now? Yeah, I would. I think it would be really fun and I'd have a really good time. So I think that for me, I think my gaming journey can be a bit more emotional and different and not as, analytical, that my ratings may change based on how I'm interacting with it at the time.
I'm here for this. You'll get some people who do not like this at all. Because some people will be like, well, if you played it so much that you don't like it, then it should be a higher rating. And I hear that, but ultimately, ratings are still based on, like, the way I usually put it, and you and I have had this conversation around Gloomhaven when I rated that.
Yes.
The way I usually put it is, there are games that can hold up to a lot of plays, and I still love them. And there are games that I play a lot, and then I get tired and bored of them. And ratings will always be, to me, based on what my experience with the journey is so far. And sometimes that's not fair, because sometimes I'll give a game a 4, and then 7 plays later, it's a 3, and that's why I do roundups. That's why I do look-backs. I do look-backs on the channel. I do, like, where are they now? How have things fared? I do ultimately adjust things over time. But I'm always giving you the best information I have at the time that I'm giving it.
And I think, not to get super personal, but I think we're kind of having that kind of discussion in this review. Where I said I do play this solo, I think it's one of those things that I'm almost upset with myself binging that on the computer, so it's not the game's fault. It's me sometimes not doing something I should, but I'm
when you say a lot, how much have you played this?
I think not that. I think like 30 games in the past, 4 months or something.
It's not crazy.
So yeah, that's nothing crazy. It plays, when you play solo on BJ, it plays very quickly.
Well, the reason I ask is you mentioned playing on the computer. There are 1 or 2 games over time that I have, like Galaxy Truckers is a game. Again, we're getting deep dive into this. Galaxy Truckers is a game that once upon a time I got the app, played it 100 times, and that killed my desire to play it with real people. So things can happen like that, but yeah, either way.
Yeah, for me, this one, I definitely would have started it at a 4, and I think that if you're someone that doesn't devour games like that, or if you have a game group that you would pull this out with them, especially at 4-player, I would recommend it. For me, I gotta put it away for a little while. I need it to stay away.
Anyways, as far as game recommendations, what do you have?
For me, so I kind of wrestled with what I would compare this to, and I think that something that is just as satisfying is Patchwork. So that is a 2-player only game, but it's something that has a lot of replayability with the puzzle that it provides. And I think that it's like the same kind of mechanism in your brain.
Cool. For me, I'm going to go with an older game that probably still is around, but Reef. Reef is a game that, to me, this game felt that it built upon what Reef was doing and just did it better. More thematic, more satisfying as far as the gameplay, but it very much gave me the vibes of Reef, which has you building out an ocean floor, trying to build patterns, and I just thought this was a much better version of that game, which I already enjoyed, but I think this one did it better. In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co.
I'm Professor Mag.
And have a good one.
Bye.